Well, good morning and welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder. This is BRN AM for Thursday, December 12th, 2019. And here are your top stories. How to give back without busting your budget, and college costs are just as problematic as student loans. Americans are some of the most charitable people on the planet, but sometimes our budgets can be strapped. How can you still donate without busting your budget? George Groenbacher, Chief Community Officer with Money Alignment Academy, is with us to discuss. George, good morning to you in Scottsdale, Arizona. How are you?
Good morning, Jeff. I am doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, it's great to see you. And I know it's exceedingly early, but thanks for making some time for us this morning. Always a pleasure talking with you and getting your perspective. So, George, charitable donations are down this year, and that's for a lot of different reasons. Many are blaming the tax reform package from last year. Many are just saying that Americans are being more frugal. But there are certainly ways that Americans can give back regardless of where they are in their budget.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I can't speak to the reasons why it is that Americans are giving less, probably all those reasons. But what I do know, and what I can speak from obviously, is my personal experience. And I heard years ago that there's really three ways that we can give, and that's we can give our time, our talent, and our treasure. So treasure obviously being the money piece of it, but then there's enormous opportunities for anyone to engage in the giving of, again, your time and your talent. So you think about the massive number of not-for-profit organizations out there that would love to have your help or somebody's help. There's opportunities to go and volunteer. Just, I mean, if it's passing out food or packing boxes, you name it. There's tons of activities like that. But I think more important than that, figure out what you're really good at. Figure out how it is that an organization could really benefit from what you know how to do better than they potentially know how to do. And I've been in professional sales for my entire career. So I know that a lot of the nonprofit work that I do is in outreach to find potential new donors, and that's a comfortable thing for me. Not necessarily the right thing for everybody else, but that's just an example. So I always want to encourage people to figure out what kind of an organization they want to get involved with, and then figure out what I bet there's a way that I'd really be able to benefit, and they'd benefit from my set of skills.
I think those are great points, and I know you're very philanthropic. I try to help out where possible. And it's interesting, we just had a round of NFL football games on Sunday, and I think Sunday was my cause, my cleats, or your cause, my cleats. And so many Americans don't have the same budgets. They're not able to create cleats. But I think your point about time is valuable. And, not-for-profit organizations are, challenged oftentimes in terms of resources. And so maybe they need help, to your point about marketing, or maybe they need help in information technology, or maybe they need help in getting donors. I think that is a valuable asset that people can give without busting their budgets. And I think that's, when you look at it on face value, it doesn't seem like you're not giving $1 million and maybe or $1,000 and you can't take that tax deduction. But what you can do is you can be part of a cause that you really believe in and contribute time.
Yeah, and I think it's such an important thing, an important distinction, that your time is as valuable, if sometimes not more valuable, to a lot of these organizations, because believe it or not, they need help. And I currently work with a handful of not-for-profit organizations, and I'm not giving a ton of money, but I am giving my expertise and my time, and I'm having a very, very profound impact on them. So when you do evaluate and you say, you know what, I want to work with the Boys and Girls Club, or I want to work with Big Brothers Big Sisters, those are two incredible organizations, if you like young people, where it does not require a lot of money. You can mentor and get involved with a young person and have a really profound impact. But whatever the organization is, I think being really upfront and clear in the expectation. So let's pretend you're the executive director. You say, hey, Jeff, love your organization. I want to get involved. I'm not in a position right now to donate a lot of money, but I am an excellent marketer. I've got experience in bookkeeping or IT or whatever it might be, and wanted to find out if there's an opportunity for me to donate some of my time and expertise to your organization.
Yeah, I think a good point. And George, I want to also talk about retirees, because we have talked off and on this program, on the podcast, about the importance of retirees. Many folks transitioned out of their day-to-day work and are looking for kind of that next venture, and there are causes they believe in. And as we've talked about on this program and other places, retirees are a very valuable source of not only knowledge and experience, but also connections and skill sets. And I think those are people that can really contribute in a way beyond just the dollars and cents.
There's no two ways about it. You think about just a lifetime of experience and wisdom, and obviously whatever their vocation was, whatever they were doing for work, extremely valuable. And again, just figuring out, here's what I'm interested in doing, and being intentional about reaching out and then having those conversations. And these days, through technology, I know that there's a lot of great websites and resources that will aggregate different opportunities for volunteering. So I think, like anything else, it's so important to be intentional about how it is that you're interested in donating your resources to nonprofits.
And also, let's not forget the leadership aspect. I think you mentioned, there are boards that, there are always not-for-profit boards where they're looking for very, all different types of leaders. So if you're from the CEO down to the manager, that leadership is important. There's a vacuum of leadership, and so those positions are always available, and people need that type of help.
No doubt. Yeah, I always want to encourage people to don't hold back from reaching out to an organization because you think that they don't need your help, because while they may not need it today, they will for sure need it 6 months from now or a year from now.
And I would be remiss if I didn't say that one of the areas that I think we're focused on, at least I'm focused on, the network's focused on, I think you're pretty passionate about this too, is financial literacy and getting people to understand the value of a dollar. So whether you're sitting down with someone who may be less fortunate, volunteering your time, and even if you are not an economist or a financial advisor like George may be, or an expert in a particular field of finance, you have a whole lot of experience that you can donate to children of all ages or to college students to be able to go in and talk about what you learned about balancing your budget and the trials and tribulations about saving for retirement or buying the first home or renting or going back to school, right, George? I mean, those are skills that you can just that's experience you can just pass along.
What's obvious to you is brilliant to somebody else, and having gone through it and being able to clarify what can be very abstract things for somebody and to quantify it, to tell a story about how you did it.
Yeah, that's pretty powerful. Well, George, I want you to stick around. I know it's early where you are, but let's stick around. When we come back, we're going to talk to George about the escalating costs of college and get his thoughts on that. So stay tuned right here on BRN AM. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms, especially for the smaller businesses? I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network. Welcome back. Not only are student loans spinning out of control, but so are college costs. So what should families do? George Gronbacher, Chief Community Officer with the Money Alignment Academy, is with us to discuss. George, thanks so much for sticking around this morning.
Yeah, glad to still be here.
Yeah, well, we're glad to have you. I know it's very early, a couple hours difference, between East Coast and Mountain Time. So thanks so much for sticking with us. So you've got two young children, and they're very young, but at some point you may want them to consider going to school. And as you know, George, we've talked about it on this program and other places. College costs are growing, escalating very high, and in addition, we've got student loans that number close to $1.5 trillion. Let's talk a little bit about college costs, because I think that's an area that people really don't really assess when thinking about picking a school.
Yeah, I think that really does seem to be the reality these days, is that when you have young people graduating with hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt, with degrees that do not seem, at least from what the headlines indicate, to be able to lead them towards gainful employment, then there's been a huge breakdown. And there's an enormous problem. We were just talking a minute ago about the opportunity for giving your time, giving your expertise. And I think that this is a glaring example of when the grown-ups in the room need to step up to the plate and help their children to make a good decision, or at least to avoid making a horrible decision. Because I don't know what you were like when you were 17 or 18 years old, Jeff, but I was very fortunate that while I chose a very expensive school for a variety of reasons, I only graduated school in 2001 with, I think, $11,000 or $12,000 in debt. And that was very, very manageable. And that's a story for another day. But just another, it illustrates that my folks, for a million different reasons, didn't really have a lot of conversations with me about how we were going to pay for that. And so I know with my kids that we're certainly saving money, yes, but when it comes time to make a decision on where it is that they're going to go to school, it's going to be a pretty in-depth conversation about how to pay for this, how to fund it. Is this the right choice based on the means that we have at that time? And like everything else regarding money, these can be uncomfortable conversations, but not more uncomfortable than trying to figure out how to pay off $100,000 of debt when you're 23 years old.
Yeah, and I think that's really a good point well taken. And just for the record, I think I was a pretty good 17-year-old, but like every other 17-year-old, you kind of get yourself into some trouble from time to time, and maybe we'll have my mom and dad on at some point to tell some Jeff Snyder stories. But I think it all boils down to whether or not, number one, does your child really need to go to college? Because they may, and there's nothing wrong. It used to be that you had to go to college, and we talked about it before. I mean, that there's this bias that you have to go to college, but some people, maybe they are artists, or they prefer to work with their hands, or they really enjoy automotive repair. There are other or technology, because for technology, quite frankly, you don't necessarily need a degree. You can be a great coder and not have a degree in computer science. So it really, really depends on the skill sets that you develop. And I think to your point earlier, George, when you're 17 or 18, or even 21 or 22, you really don't know what you're going to be doing. I mean, did I intend to do this when I was 18 years old? No, I thought I was going to be an electrical engineer. Well, how did that turn out? I mean, I would have been a horrible electrical engineer. So I think you go through I don't know, fits and, where you figure out kind of where direction you're going to go and you're kind of meandering, you bump into the wall. But you don't want to get yourself saddled with a lot of debt, just hoping for that, that you've nailed it on the first try.
Yeah, I totally agree. And for me, I think I wanted to be a pirate, Jeff. Going to rule that out. Yeah.
Hard. Well, that's kind of interesting.
Time.
But you grew up in Minnesota? No, Michigan. Minnesota?
Minnesota.
Yeah. Okay, so there is water there. So cause I was going to say Arizona, probably not a good place to be a pirate.
There's 10,000 lakes in Minnesota, Jeff. Come on, man. There's
plenty of pirate. Yeah, there's plenty of opportunities to be a pirate. But point taken. I think you would have made a great pirate, George.
Thank you. Yes, I think that the conversation around is college necessary has changed a lot over probably the last 50 years or so. It went from, very few people got college education, and now all of a sudden everybody got a college education. And then after 2008, everybody got an MBA and everybody went to law school. And so what happened was the administration of these universities with available money through the form of loans all of a sudden realized, wow, we can really make a ton of money. And with technology and these platforms for education that are proliferating faster and faster and faster, I think that when it comes time for my kids to evaluate higher education, it's going to be a totally different conversation. I hope that if they want to have the same kind of experience at a four-year university where you move away and stay somewhere, by all means, I'll support them in doing that. But I tell you what, I think that a lot of these institutions of higher learning better get their acts together and better figure out how to not saddle kids with all this debt if they don't have supportive adults around them that can help them to make educated and good decisions.
I think that, going back to our conversation earlier about financial literacy, towards the end of our last segment, I think that's a really important point. I mean, don't mortgage your future. And that is a very important lesson. And I think you're right. I think there is some concern that higher education institutions maybe have, their costs are ballooning and grown their administration and grown their organizations. Maybe that's unsustainable, and that is what necessitates these higher costs. But I think you really have to do that old, take a sheet of paper and do the pros and cons that we used to do. Maybe take an iPad and you figure out what are the pros of going to this school, what are the cons, what am I going to get out of it? I mean, certainly one of the things that when you go to a quote unquote really good school with a great alumni network is you have the opportunity to get a really good job. But for the average person coming out of school, they're not going to make $100,000, $150,000. I mean, you're just learning. You have basic skills. You need to work your way up. I mean, the reality is you're probably making somewhere in the neighborhood of somewhere between $35,000 and $55,000, depending on your degree. Maybe a little bit more if you're in financial services and you decide to work on quote unquote on Wall Street. But I really think people need to have that heart-to-heart talk with a mentor, with a parent, with a guidance counselor to figure out what's important to them.
Yeah, I really agree that that's what it comes down to, and setting the expectations up front, at least as much as you're capable with doing. Yes, you can go to a top 20 school, and if you're able to get in, here's the potential reward that you'll get on the back end of that. It's going to cost you this much. Are those worthwhile commitments that, from your estimation, is the juice worth the squeeze?
Yeah, and are you willing to sacrifice maybe pizza or time out with friends while you're paying off that debt? Because it doesn't look like this $1.5 trillion is going to come down anytime soon. And by the way, it's not just $1.5 trillion to younger people. It's of all generations. It's yours and my generation. It's our parents' generation. Those people have either have the college debt or they co-signed for college debt. So they're carrying it later on in life. And because of that, there necessitates sacrifices. And so being aware of all those things, I'm bullish, George. I'm bullish that future generations are going to understand and learn from the mistakes that we made, and will carry that forward when they're selecting their organizations for higher education.
100%. I agree.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, best of luck to you in the next 12 years, or what do you have? 14 years? How old's your one son? He's 4, 5?
I have a 3-year-old and a 2-month-old. So
okay, so you got some time. Well, unless they accelerate and then they graduate, they're like Doogie Howser, and they graduate by the time they're 12, and then you've got some decisions.
I always know that if I want to scare the heck out of somebody, a new parent, I just show them what college is going to cost in 18 years, and that normally does it. So
it does. Well, George Grumbacher, thank you so much for getting up this morning. Always a pleasure talking with you, and we will have you back on the network. And if I don't talk to you before the end of the year, happy holidays and happy New Year to you and your family.
You too, Jeff. Thanks.
And that wraps up this episode of BRN AM. Hey, have a financial topic or someone of interest that you think we should interview? Drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the news in retirement markets, technology, personal finance, and so much more, check out today's edition of The Morning Pulse. So until tomorrow, Friday, I'm Jeff Snyder. Keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.